Welcome back to Ready for Traction, the show where we skip the hype and we get into what actually moves a business forward. Today's guest spent his early career inside Google's head office in Sydney as a senior digital strategist. And I don't mean he sat near the ads team. Oliver Pestalozzi wrote the training materials Google used to teach advertisers and presented at hundreds of Grow with Google events. He founded his own agency, Pestalozzi Digital, and went on to manage serious ad budgets for everyone from local businesses to brands like OREO and Toblerone. He also built Google Ads Masters, a course and community that's trained over 1,600 business owners to stop lighting their ad budgets on fire. Here is why this episode really matters, and I feel like no matter where you are in your business journey, your marketing journey, there's so much to learn from Oliver. While Oliver's the paid traffic guy, I'm the organic girl. So today we're going to get into both sides of how those two worlds come together, where ads win, where organic wins, and what happens when both of them work as one. So let's jump right in. You worked with Google for a long time. You wrote their training materials. You presented at their events. What is the biggest gap between what Google tells advertisers to do and what you'd actually tell a friend that was going to spend their own money?
Well, great question. I think it's an interesting one because Google tells advertisers to do a lot of things, most of which are in the direction of like automate your controls, smart bidding strategies, keywords, do certain things that are basically going to remove manual controls from the platform, right? So you want to kind of give Google a lot of automation. They also recommend that you increase the budget very early on brand new campaigns, that you increase your maximum CPCs. They really recommend a lot of things. I am on the camp that really prefers full manual control. And to be honest, nearly all professional CPC people are. Like they've been really frustrated at Google's moves over the years to remove manual controls, to take back a lot of the control and to kind of put it in the hands of the algorithm. And so what Google tells advertisers is go to the recommendations tab, apply everything you see there. It's really important that you get a super high optimization score. And, if you don't have a high optimization score, you should lose sleep. And I think that's just total bullshit. Like, honestly, I was part of the pilot team that rolled out the recommendations tab, where literally we often the US, being the biggest market for Google, would trial certain products like smart shopping or the recommendations tab in Australia, because the idea was like, if it works in Australia, an Anglophone sort of English speaking market, very culturally similar to the US, then it's probably going to work in the US as well. So they would trial all of these products in our market and then they would roll them out to the US. And when I say Australia, that includes New Zealand. No offense to the New Zealand homies over there. They're just too small to get their own kind of name. So anyway, I think like when it comes to Google's recommendations, I would really take them with a grain of salt. As I said, we were part of the pilot team that rolled out the recommendations tab. So I really know firsthand how valuable or even invaluable it really is. The optimization score, I heard sales reps say all kinds of things, say that the optimization score is the quality score. Because you know how Google has this infamous quality score that's like a black box. They would sort of tell advertisers that in order to get a good quality score, you need to have a really high optimization score, which is not factually true at all. And so honestly, the optimization score is just a vanity metric. I think that just like a lot of the automated bidding strategies, a lot of, Google's push for advertisers to use broad match keywords are just not useful pieces of advice. And I would tell my friend to do exactly the opposite, which is to have really manual control, especially for an early campaign with a small budget. I'd be doing manual CPC or maximum CPC with a bid strategy, a bid limit that's set. And then I would keep the budget restricted and work my way up slowly and gradually, not applying any of the recommendations.
Yeah. It also kind of makes sense too. And I've reached out to you on this, where their account reps reach out and they kind of press you with these fear-mongering emails and sometimes CC your client and say like, you need to act now. You better read this. We get your campaign, whatever, you're burning money, whatever it is. And I'm like, Oliver, is this true?
Yeah, totally based on fear. They literally just want you to be like, oh my God, Google knows more than me. They're telling me that I'm missing out. And more importantly, they want your client to think that, because then they know that that's going to control you as the advertiser if you're advertising for a client. So it's a classic kind of technique where if the agency or the freelancer, you or me, isn't responding to the Google sales rep, they will then email the business owner. And in fact, in many cases, like To be honest, I'm guilty of this. I used to do this, and I used to see other people in the team doing this, which would be like the priority was to build a relationship with the business owner, not the agency person, because agencies come and go. So it would be about
Yeah.
like getting the business owner on the phone, getting in his ear, winning his trust, and then suddenly you're sowing a lot of seeds of doubt in his mind about the strength of his agency. So as an agency, if you're doing legitimate good work, you have to then go into sort of an authority battle with against Google and tell the business owner like, hey, like I actually have your best interests at heart, not this random person from Google that keeps calling you who wants you to raise your budget. So it becomes like a
Yeah.
bit of a boxing match.
That doesn't also know the, maybe the products or the niches that you want to be advertising on. I had one reach out to me today and
Oh,
tell me like, you guys are missing out on this campaign. And it was an old campaign that had been paused intentionally.
yeah.
And the email was filled with, negative, negative, negative. And I was like, you don't even know. That client
Yeah.
doesn't want to promote those services.
Yeah, exactly. But you better make sure that the business owner is aware of your strategy and plan because he could take that, you know what I mean, if he's just listening to what that person's saying. That being said, I've got a whole thesis and sort of a mindset about like being a growth partner, not just like a Google Ads expert to the clients that I work with. So I do everything from Facebook to TikTok to Google to Pinterest to LinkedIn, whatever ads are necessary, in addition to landing pages and CRM management, all of the stuff that it takes to grow a business. So with that framing, it's very obvious that your motivation is to grow the business, not to just get them to spend more on Google Ads. And so you can kind of very easily win the authority argument against a sales rep from Google.
I like that you said that. It made me think of something that I think is important from an SEO perspective. I like to continually check in with my clients and hear about the quality of the leads that are coming in. Do you feel like that's a part of your job? I mean, would you say that you like to monitor that with them?
Totally. I think like it's an interesting one though, because how do you quantify quality? When you
Yeah.
say, because you can easily say, hey, we got you 115 leads last week. Great. How do you actually put a number on the number of quality leads that came through? So that's when SQL, like sales qualified lead, comes into the picture, and how you define an SQL for each business will be slightly different. So we do things like in Go High Level, for example, along the sales, the pipeline, the funnel, like you can, you move a lead from left to right. If, for example, the lead responds to a message or engages in communication, then they're that's like the first indication that they're potentially sales qualified. It's much better than the person who never even responded, who was just a total tire kicker or like a waste of time for the sales team. So there we can begin to track, okay, we've got 115 leads and we actually got 89 SQLs. And suddenly that becomes the number we fixate on. So yeah, like I definitely agree with you. How do you track your qualified leads?
I would say if it's just from an SEO perspective, I would want to see, their journey throughout the website. Where did they go? What pages did they research? And really, I mean, it's harder with organic for sure to go, okay, a phone call came in. Was that from organic? The way I do it is similar. You use Go High Level. I put all my clients in HubSpot, which does a pretty decent job of tracking the user flow.
Yeah.
And then obviously it's like training with the client to say like, hey, when this lead did call, go in and make some notes. Not that I want them to ask like, how did you find us? But HubSpot does track that for me. So I can go in and see like, okay, I see we got 2 calls this week. One came from, an AI mention, one came from an organic search. And it helps. I mean, it definitely is a collaboration with the client, but I think as soon as the client sees, as soon as I provide more insight, it helps Amber because there's pages on sites that maybe when we launched the site 2 years ago, it was a really valuable page to have. So for example, sometimes a client might have an add-on to a service that is no longer something that they really want to focus on, but we're seeing in the lead funnel from a not a search campaign, from an organic search funnel that they came in, maybe they landed on that page and they inquired, and it helps the client be more aware of, hey, you know what? I forgot that we had this page up. This lead came in. We are going to quote it, but we really don't want this kind of business. So just kind of piggybacking on what you're saying, like building those systems for people is so important. And it's kind of not the norm in my experience for businesses to have a whole system like that set up. A lot of people are still like running from a Google spreadsheet or they're not tracking. They're like, I got some phone calls today. They were decent. or, some emails came in, but I don't know where they came from. And I hear that a lot. But I think as advertising is becoming more expensive and everything is more competitive everywhere we look, I feel like it's getting much easier to have that conversation with a client to be like, hey, let's actually like measure this for reals
Mm.
and, make sure that you know exactly where your customers are coming from and why.
Yeah. 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 I think
So,
that's where it's heading to, because relying on Google's or even Facebook's conversions, like and the number of reported conversions in platform is just not really. I don't really pay any attention to it anymore, except for like optimizing campaigns.
yeah.
I will pay attention to it then. But in terms of actually telling a client, hey, we got X number of leads this week, I don't base that on Google or Facebook. I base it on the CRM.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to, because you said this last week on your webinar was on that Google will say, oh, we sent 16 conversions. But then when you go into the CRM, you're like, that's weird. I only see 7. And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know. It's funky. And like, no matter how many times you go and check the conversion tracking, it's never
No.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Or
it's
it's like
tricky.
someone clicked on the phone number and then hung up after 1 second, and like you really got nothing from that. And they maybe did it by accident. And so
Yeah.
that Google
True.
tracking that as a conversion, but the CRM, the client definitely doesn't see that as a lead.
Yeah. They're like, they hung up after 2 seconds. That's not a lead. Okay. So kind of asking a question that like lives in the realm that both of you and I work in. So you're the paid guy. I'm the organic girl. A business owner with 5K a month walks in. We're going to fight for it. Where does the money go first and when?
So this is a funny one. I am a huge, guess what I am? You can probably guess. I'm a big fan of paid ads, and I really would always argue for paid ads over SEO. That being said, I just want to make it clear, I don't hate SEO. I think it's definitely got its value. I think it's got its use. But I will say kind of 3 main things on this. Now, the first is, there's this buying versus renting argument where SEO is buying the house and paid ads are just renting the house. And I think there's a lot of validity to that. That being said, it's just a question of resource allocation. Just like sometimes you can't afford to buy the house, you have to be renting the house. Sometimes as well, when you have a limited resources, you have a small budget, it's the early stages of a business, or maybe it's just a small business. I would be prioritizing paid ads because of the immediate return that can deliver. Whereas and this is just my personal opinion. Again, I'm expecting you to come toe to toe and punch me in the face over this, but coming on here and talking shit about SEO on your podcast, but I will say, like, so I think in the early stages of the business, I would personally be prioritizing paid ads because I can immediately see the return. I can have proper conversion tracking, like we've just said, and really make sure that I know how many leads I actually got from my paid ads investment. Then I'm going to be able to see what's the cost per lead, how many of those leads actually booked in appointments, what's the cost per appointment booked, how many people showed up, what's the cost per show, what's the show rate, what's the close rate. I can like actually track things in a very systematic way. Whereas with SEO, I feel there's often a tail to it where work done today doesn't really bear fruit, maybe for a few months potentially, and even then
Yep.
it can be difficult to track because a few months from now we might have a really good social media presence, we might have an awesome email database, we might have all sorts of things happening such that we don't fully maybe know if it's from the SEO investment we made a few months ago, or if it's just from the business naturally growing. So I think there's that. Those are a few objections I have to the buying versus renting idea, particularly when it comes to like a restricted budget. That being said, if you're a huge company, I think you should be doing SEO. But for me, working primarily with service businesses and businesses that they're not tiny, but they're not Coca-Colas of the world, and that's a very intentional choice. I think it's a question of resource allocation. The second thing I'll say is that the ongoing investment in SEO, I sometimes have difficulty with. And again, I'm expecting you to come back on this. Whereas like, I think early on, you can make a bunch of optimizations and improvements to the website. You can get local schema on the back end. You can be posting blogs and things. And I question sometimes if there's much value in doing that month after month, ad infinitum, because sometimes I feel that the real value is in the early stages of SEO, and then just letting that marinate and letting the systems kind of ingest all of the work that you've done. The third thing I will say is I think SEO agencies really need to be shifting, or at least adding onto their focus, AEO and like answer engine optimization and appearing in ChatGPT and Gemini and things like that, rather than just pure old traditional SEO. So if your SEO agency isn't even talking about that, I think that maybe you've got something to be concerned about. So they're my three real main thoughts on going toe to toe when it comes to SEO. So for the $5,000, in my mind, that's a small budget. I would be putting it all into paid ads. Now I'm ready for you to, I'm going to put my mouth guard in and you can come back and punch me in the
Duck.
face.
So I have like 8 responses. I'm going to try to trim it down. First, I will say it truly depends on the reach of the client. If it is a local business that is hurting and that needs the phone to ring tomorrow, I would 100% recommend shifting most of that budget towards ads. And then I would say, maybe 25% of it shift towards some SEO efforts, because I think if you can optimize that map listing, if you can get some citations out there, some Reddit mentions, things like that, that client is going to see a very quick return on their Google business profile listing, and they're going to jump without paying above their competitors probably in like 30 days. And that's if they're handing that off to someone that understands SEO. And here's the caveat to that. Their website has to be somewhat decently optimized, or that Google business listing page isn't going to do as well. So I personally tell every client, if you can do both, do both. And, and then divvy up how the money gets spent if it is a $5,000 budget. I have worked with brands who are like, I don't want to do any SEO. I don't have the money I just redid my website. It's perfect. They're very closed off to that. And that profile will not optimize as fast as a client who has a very well optimized site, or at least the landing page where the user is going to click when they land there. A website that's missing the NAP, the name, address, phone number, they're going to tank in Google business. They're not going to do well, and they're going to rack their brains trying to figure out what's wrong with it. They're going to keep changing their service listing on their Google business profile, and they're never going to see it climb, because Google doesn't want to see shady things changing all the time. Like, Google tends to really like consistency and someone sticking to what their offering is.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I think if someone, calls me and they're like, hey, we want to rank, for these nationwide keywords, we think we should do SEO, I'm 100% going to say, yes, we do need to do SEO for the reasons I just explained. But first and foremost, I would say we need to do ads right away if we want to start building brand awareness, depending on what they do. And if they're in a very competitive niche, lawyers, for example, HVAC, those guys can't just wait on an SEO campaign, because their competitors are already doing most likely both. So yeah, that's my trimmed down response. So I agree on a lot of parts, but I personally have seen ads perform better when they're pointing back to a URL that's really well optimized and it's really well built.
For sure. But I think, okay, so coming back to the question, so $5,000, that's the budget. What are you doing?
Yeah, I would go 75% ads, 25% SEO efforts.
Okay.
Because I know that's going to get them results the fastest.
True.
And that's all people want. They don't want to hear like, wow, in 6 months, I'm going to be in a great place. They want to know what's going to happen next week.
Yeah. So that's probably where we differ then, because I would go 100% in ads for like 3 to 6 months. And then once we've got the wheels turning, let's talk about an SEO budget. That's how I would approach it.
Okay.
But then again, I'm biased.
Agree to disagree. Do you see ad campaigns succeed well on like a crap website, like a total crap website? Or are you just like, nah, this isn't going to work. I'm not going to work with this website.
Okay, that is actually a great point. If the website is total garbage, I will immediately not use it, and I will use a landing page, like on a completely separate subdomain, or
go high level or something.
I'll bypass it completely.
Okay.
It's true. If the website is garbage, we're in for a hard time.
Yeah.
So usually what I love is for someone like you to be involved in some way or another to like nail the website and get SEO, like get the site into a position where we're not completely fighting an uphill battle, and let paid ads complement the situation. Because paid ads on its own with a crap website, with a terrible GMB like Google My Business or Google Business Profile, it will be hard. It actually will be. But
yeah. And it's funny because people don't realize how important optimizing the GBP is, the Google Business Profile, whatever it's called this year.
Yeah.
They don't realize how important it is. They're like, oh, I don't know. I filled it out. And what do I need to do anything?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you need to do a lot.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So we kind of agree. It sounds like we
I think
kind
we
of agree.
agree. Well, we're talking about the difference of what $1,250, like because you said
Yeah.
25%. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think we agree. We just differ maybe slightly on the timing.
True. Because so you're saying eventually once this client's like leads are coming in, they're happy, then you would be like, yeah, I think it's a good time to start up SEO.
Well, yeah, because if the client's like, hey, we're struggling, we are literally struggling to function, then I would not be putting $1 into SEO because I would just think that it's going to take too long to see the results of that. And it's like an emergency. So in that case, I would be prioritizing landing pages, paid ad funnels, and things that can deliver quick results that we can iterate on. And yeah, like say the SEO, it's almost like, if they come into the ER with, a bullet hole inside them, I would then be patching up the bullet hole. But in the long term, I would also be giving them a health plan with healthy, terrible analogy, but you
Yeah.
get what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
there's a difference between ongoing,
Ways to avoid bullet holes, basically.
that's exactly right. Like I should have used sort of a different analogy. Maybe they come in with like, an obesity problem and they need an instant heart transplant. So I'd be doing the emergency work, but then in the long run, I'd be giving them a health plan for better eating and exercise and things like that and sleep and whatever else they need. That is where, in my mind, SEO comes into the picture as more of a
Got
health
it.
kind of consideration.
Okay, so we're going to get into a little bit of war stories because I'm sure you have a lot of them. You have managed campaigns for brands like Oreo and Toblerone alongside local businesses. What does a multinational get catastrophically wrong that a scrappy local business would never do, and vice versa?
Yeah. Great question. So I think the funny thing here is that like it all comes down to basically where there's more money involved, there's more reason to be discerning with who you listen to and why. And that means everyone. So I've got a few really interesting examples here that I think kind of typify this idea. The first is shortly after I left Google, I was contacted by a major agency who, I thought they were going to try and hire me or something like that, and I wasn't interested. And they said, "Hey, we've just won a massive, massive client. It was actually Energy Australia, massive, one of the biggest energy providers in the country. Budget on Google Ads $1 million per month." And they were like, "Yeah, we've just won this massive client. The only thing is that no one here knows how to do Google Ads. So,
And they're an agency?
so can you do it?" And I was literally like, "Okay, a few questions. How did you like? I don't even understand how you won the client if you don't do what you've sold them." And it's just classic. This was like 2021 classic cowboy era of digital marketing agencies. And I think I'm happy to see we're kind of on the way out of that because a lot of those guys have been cleaned up, and people just don't trust them anymore. But anyway, so they came to me and I did do that. I was white labeled. I did the entire Google Ads build for that account myself personally, and I managed it for a few months. And then I actually interviewed the person who was going to take over from me, and they hired that person as a full-time internally. But like, I think it was just a classic example for me of how and to bring it back to the question, how a massive company with a massive budget just are able to just make decisions without fully vetting them, or they probably fielded 50 different proposals to manage their Google Ads campaigns, and they chose the slide deck that looked prettiest, or maybe that agency also offered them the chance to do creative or Facebook ads or SEO or other stuff, and Google was like a little bolt on at the end. Who knows? But I think it's a classic example where multinationals make those kinds of mistakes that tiny businesses just simply cannot afford to. And also, I would say that like a small business with a $5,000 to $10,000 budget isn't very attractive to, on aggregate, just in the market, isn't going to be fielding as many proposals potentially from, very put together agencies that can purport to kind of know exactly what they're doing when it comes to Google Ads management. So I think being really discerning with who they hire and why, and it's hard to vet these things. But the second thing is brand awareness campaigns. I think local businesses just cannot afford to be doing that. Like, for example, when we were at Google, we used to really pitch heavily on YouTube campaigns and big broad spectrum, pitches on, oh, you should invest 100,000 into YouTube for the next 3 weeks. I think that'd be a great a great
Wow.
look for the brand. Here's who we can target. And then the company would go away and they'd think about it and they'd be like, yeah, look, we just think we're going to allocate that budget elsewhere. Or maybe, yeah, let's go for it. And it's just oftentimes, I'm a big fan of direct response marketing. That's why I like paid ad funnels that lead to immediate results and everything can be tracked. When it comes to brand awareness, it's just too wishy-washy for me. I think that local businesses shouldn't be wasting any money or time considering things like that, or display campaigns that look pretty but aren't necessarily leading to A, sales, or B, leads. I would just be avoiding them completely. And so, yeah, I mean, I think when there's big money involved, you just have to be very discerning with who you're listening to and why, because you're going to get a lot of people requesting things from you or pitching things to you. And that's where,
Horrible ideas.
or just shitty ideas that, I mean, why would you pitch a brand awareness campaign for $100,000? Like, maybe there's some uplift, and Google launched, brand uplift studies, the surveys when you're watching YouTube and it's like, which of these ads have you seen recently?
Yeah.
That's a brand uplift study. So the purpose of those
Oh.
surveys, we used to, you'd have to kind of fill out a form and make it happen internally to basically get, you'd say, we're gonna run your $100,000 YouTube campaign, and just to prove that it works, we're also gonna run a brand uplift study, and that's what that is. And so it's a bit of a manual process to get it going. Like, I don't believe that an advertiser can just run their own brand uplift study. You need someone on the inside to actually make that happen for you. And then
Huh.
basically ask that question in a survey to thousands of people who'd seen the ad, as well as others who hadn't, and kind of get a sense for, brand uplift. But it's a bit arbitrary, to be honest. And you need a seriously statistically significant number of people to have seen the ad for it to even be meaningful.
Yeah,
Anyway, I
that
think,
makes sense.
yeah, I just think that local businesses are so much more like resource. There's so much,
Then.
yeah, there's resource thin. Exactly. There's so much
Yeah.
fewer resources that they have to basically make decisions in a far more strategic and kind of sensible, outcome oriented way.
Yeah, I would agree. I found you through your course,
Yeah.
and which is funny because how I feel about the course space is literally just a bunch of D-bags with rented Lamborghinis and, false claims and living this life of luxury. And so it's funny to me, but your messaging and what you were sharing seemed so helpful. And obviously, I want to be able to provide the best level of service for my clients. But I think it would be cool for you to talk a little bit about how you are you're a guru in your space. You really are. And, even though that word sounds a little douchey, how do you see the difference between someone who's been burned and, I guess, position yourself when you are, putting together any kind of like ads or whatever you're doing to promote your business? Because I can't even remember how your course came across my feed somewhere. And I was like, oh man, this guy's the real deal. I'm doing this.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like, I think so. The course that you're referring to is this program that I launched called Google Ads Masters, which was, again, shortly after I left Google. I experimented back and forth with the headline and kind of the title of it that would catch people's attention, and we tried a bunch of things. And what ended up working really well, which is probably how you ended up seeing and buying the course, was, you click. It was Learn Google Ads by the guy who developed Google's own training program, something like that. Or
That sounds
Learn Google
familiar.
Ads, Google's own training. Yeah. So it was a killer headline. It was also true and authentic. And that's why I think it connected with a lot of people, and that authority really stood out in a space where, as you say, there are a lot of D-bags driving fake Lamborghinis, sitting in private jets that never leave the tarmac, and just talking. And so, like, I almost, to the point where I was almost embarrassed that I had launched an online course, because I didn't want to be associated with them. I didn't want to be a course bro. And I think in many ways, that's really led to the way I manage things now is, we had a few thousand people purchase that online program that you're referring to, many of whom, including yourself, are now in the online community where the course is housed, along with other programs and workshops and masterclasses and things. And it's really just, for me, a source of fun. Like, it's literally just a hub, a bit of a community to meet cool people, put on workshops. I really
Yeah.
online education and education generally speaking. I've always done a lot of that. So for me, it's like just a community to be able to kind of remain relevant and engage and interested and learn from people. And I think it's really, really cool. And I would be really sad if I didn't have that, in fact, because then I would only just be doing client work. Whereas this is a beautiful balance where I get the client work and I also get access to a thriving online community. I get to learn from people. I get to speak to people and coach people one-on-one. For me, it's really a privilege, actually. And in many ways as well, all of that engagement with thousands of different people on the internet informs the client work as well, because I'm kind of able to stay ahead of what everyone knows. And I know if I'm falling behind on something, like you're just in tune with more information. And obviously then you can bring that to your sort of one-on-one coaching clients, or even the done for you ads management clients as well. And I think you have a similar kind of model going on with your business, don't you?
I do. Yeah. And I was going to say, it probably helps you gauge where everyone's at. So your content that you're putting out is even better because you're not talking over their heads or behind the times they already know. So a question I get a lot in the SEO world and with my paid ad clients is AI overview. What the heck? Like how do you answer that question? Because no one really knows where that's going to go or what that's going to mean.
Yes. It's an interesting one. Like, so Google's been rolling out AI overviews big time. I think, though, rather than feeling like it's going to replace Google Ads, I think it's just, there's no way Google's going to cannibalize their own ads product. And that was a big concern for investors. In fact, as they started rolling out AI overviews, was that the ads side of things would really decline because suddenly there's an AI overview answering it. Why would I need to visit and click on 4 different ads and generate 4 different ads worth of revenue for Google? So I don't think Google are that dumb. I actually think they're extremely smart, and they have over 100,000 people working there who are all very smart, and they're not going to let that happen. So instead of being fearful, I actually think that ads and keyword targeting will be incorporated into AI overviews as well as Gemini in such a way that it largely won't disrupt or change too much of what we're seeing as advertisers on our end. I think it might change how the ads are consumed, but Google's priority is to maintain a thriving ad business. And we have to remember that almost to our advantage. They're not going to throw that down the drain, without giving it a second thought. So I really do believe that keyword targeting will start to be incorporated into Gemini, as well as intent targeting. They'll start to consider, what's this person looking for? How can we serve them ads? Maybe it'll be shopping ads. They're already beginning to trial it. ChatGPT is already running ads. That being said, I am running ChatGPT ads at the moment. I'm not really seeing amazing results. It's kind of like the early stages of TikTok advertising. Like the closest location target we can choose is the USA. You can't even go down further than that. Well, like whatever country you're in. In this case, we were doing it for a company in the USA. So the closest target we could choose was the US. And the target, instead of keywords or bid strategies and stuff, it's literally just a prompt. Like you say, this is who we're going after, like as if you were talking to ChatGPT. It's kind of interesting, but again, not really yielding amazing results so far. And I think they've got a lot to figure out there. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and content recently that's been saying the same thing, that they've got a lot to kind of work on to make that a really viable advertising product. That said, it could just end up being an advertising product for the massive companies that, bringing back to our earlier question, can afford to waste money on brand awareness and stuff like that, rather than local businesses who need results. But so yeah, ultimately, who knows if Google Ads, as we know it, exists? I believe it will. I believe billions of people are still using YouTube. There's going to be a need for YouTube ads, which is all managed through Google Ads. Billions of people are going to be using Google, whether it's Google search traditional or AI overviews. So there will be ads incorporated into one way or another. I think our responsibility is not to predict the future or think about how Google is going to build out their advertising offering into platforms and in order to match the way that users are using their platforms over time. I think our responsibility is more to remember that there are businesses and advertisers out there who need to meet the needs of their customers, and Google will find a way for us to make that happen.
What do you think is, just a really great way for a business to sort of safeguard themselves from all of this unknown change? Like, what's something they could do, on their own, or just know, like, hey, this is a plan we should have in action?
Well, I think there's a few things, like if we're talking about the business owner versus the agency, what are you kind of thinking?
I was thinking more towards the business owner.
Okay. I think if we're thinking towards the business owner, this stuff is moving so quickly now that even agencies who do just this for a living are struggling to keep up. So business owners who are doing their everyday work and then a little bit of marketing on the side, it's even harder, right? So I think I would be listening to podcasts. I would be experimenting with Claude, with co-work. I would just be dipping my toes in the water rather than doing what, for example, my parents did when the internet came out, which was to go like, oh, that's too hard for me. And then now they're just 30 years later, they're just completely behind the ball. Do you know what I mean? And it's too late. Like they're now AI is coming to the picture and they're now officially boomers, you
Well,
know?
no.
Exactly. So I think accepting that you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to just do Claude all the time, but you could definitely experiment with Claude or listen to a podcast about AI or listen to this podcast right now about marketing and start to get into the world of what's going on without being obsessed with it, right? Just bit by bit. I think that's all it takes. Even me, for example, it's just been a little bit of experimentation here and there that's led to some really significant breakthroughs in my productivity and stuff. So I would just recommend a business owner to just start thinking about it, being open-minded to it. Don't shut themselves off completely. Maybe invest in things like coaching or online programs, or even just watching free YouTube videos just to start getting interested. And over time, remember that you're not as far behind as you think you are, because everyone thinks they're falling behind.
Yes, that is so true. Everyone. Okay, Oliver, thank you so much. This was an awesome, awesome chat. I really appreciate it. I'm sure people might want to hear more about what you have to say or learn about your community, your coaching programs. Would you mind sharing some information on where people could find you?
Sure. So it's just my surname is Pestalozzi. That's Pestalozzi. And you can just Google Pestalozzi Digital. That's the name of my business, where we do done for you sort of lead generation, ads management. We consider ourselves growth partners. And we do a one-on-one coaching sort of offer as well for those who don't want to hire someone to do it for them. They can learn to do it themselves. And then, of course, there's the community, and just feel free to sort of give it a Google. You should find it all.
I'll also add it in the show notes.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and we'll be in touch.
Nice one. Thank you so much, Amber.